Good morning and greetings from the Hartman Institute in Yerushalayim. I've had an incredible week and a half here, incredibly enriching. I've been exposed to provocative ideas and experiences, and I think it will be many months of reflection that follow from this experience, and I'm looking forward to sharing those reflections with you and including you in my ongoing thoughts about what I've experienced and encountered here. In Parashat Hukat, at the end of the Parashat, there is a curious episode which is both similar to other episodes that we've experienced and encountered already in the Torah, but also different. It's unique. There's yet another rebellion after the death of Miriam, after the death of Aaron. V'yasumi har hahar, they leave the area of Hor Hahar. This is in Numbers chapter 21, starting at verse 4, and there's yet another rebellion. And this time, in the aftermath of this rebellion, there is a saraf, some sort of fiery serpents are let loose against the people. God sends them to the people, and many are die from the after effects of the bite of these fiery serpents. And they come to Moshe, and they confess their sin, and Moshe prays on their behalf. And so what does God tell Moshe this time? He says, Moshe, aseh lecha saraf. You should make a saraf as well. V'simoto al nes. Put it up on a banner. V'yakol hanashuch. Anyone bitten, v'ra'oto v'chai. Anyone should look upon it and live. And what happened? V'yas Moshe nachash nechoshet. A copper serpent. V'yisimehu al hanes. He puts it up on a banner. V'ya im nashach hanachash. If the actual nachash, this saraf, were to bite somebody, im ish etish, v'hi beats el nachash hanachoshet v'chai. Should look upon this brass copper serpent that Moshe made and live. And that's the story of Yisuv and Israel v'yachanu ba'avot. Then they leave and they go to someplace else. So Rashi picks up on very subtle distinctions in the words. The first of all, in verse 8, it says, Kol hanashuch, anyone bitten, and vira'auto, and sees, ra'auto, and lives. And Moshe then makes a nachash and nechoshet, not a saraf, but a nachash and nechoshet. And then it says, is anyone bitten by a nachash, if he beats al nachash and nechoshet? He has to not just see, but gaze, but look more carefully, more closely at Moshe's copper serpent, and that person should live. So Rashi says, first of all, kol nashuch means any bite, by anything that they could be healed in this way. The snake is just extra dangerous. And then he compares the ra'ah and v'hibit, that a dog bite isn't so dangerous, so you could just glance. Ra'ah, you just see Moshe's serpent and you'll recover from your dog bite. Whereas if you were bitten by this saraf, this fiery serpent, you had to gaze at Moshe's serpent in order to live. And then Rashi quotes a Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, which asks an obvious question. Rabbis ask, can this serpent that Moshe made give death or life? Is it in the power of this statue, this sculpture that Moshe made to someone would die if they don't gaze upon it appropriately, or they would live if they do gaze upon it appropriately? Ella, rather, what's the case? Bisman shayu Yisrael mistaklin klape mala mishabdim et libam lavim shebashamayim hayu mitrapim v'imlav hayu nimukim. So the issue is, if they looked at the Nachash and Nechoshet, they're looking up at the banner that Moshe placed this copper serpent on, then they would be looking up to the Shemayim, looking up to the heavens, and they would subjugate themselves. They would engage in a tshuva process inspired by gazing upwards, and that would heal them. And if not, they would succumb to the impact of their bite. And so for Rashi, quoting the Mishnah, there's no snake that can give death or life. Rather, it's our attitude. It's not the snake that kinachash memita mechaya. Of course not. But it's us. It's our attitude that determined whether we would live or die in the aftermath of this affliction of snakes. It's our attitudes. And the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, that's the basis of Rashi, compares this also to Moshe raising his arms in Sefer Shemot when we battled Amalek. It wasn't Moshe's arms that gave victory, but it was the inspiration of seeing Moshe's arms and looking upwards and being filled with faith in God that determined victory or not. I have on the source sheet that's attached to this video, you can see the Gur Aryeh, that's the Maharal super commentary on Rashi, who just points out that nachash, nechoshet, that there's something like deep in the language itself, copper and snake, these lashon nefel lashon, because language has deep, deep meaning according to the Maharal. It's not a coincidence that these words are the same, so you can think about that, contemplate that. The Ramban says further about that and invokes medieval science and how unusual it was, how miraculous it was that looking at a snake could heal somebody from a snake bite. Normally, according to the science of the 13th century, it would be the opposite, right? You should avoid any thoughts of snakes if you're bitten by a snake bite. You can see the Ramban there also on your source sheet and contemplate medieval science, but the Ramban's point is that this entire episode is miraculous and can't be understood in a scientific way. I learned a poem last week that written by a young Israeli poet during the months of this war. And when I saw this poem, I immediately thought of this episode in the Torah, the ki nachash nechayei mamit. It's not the snake that gives life and death. Rather, the snake on the banner causes us to look upwards, and that is what can sustain us. So Tali Versano Eisman writes a poem called Shani Tovat, when I'm drowning. Ein li tzorech shetitaruli et hamayim, lo et siv'am, lo et imakam, hareni chasha otam ad tzivari. Yesh li rak biksha, al tichadlu l'rega, v'lete'er li ech nir et hayavasha. When I'm drowning, I don't need you to describe the water to me. Not its color, not its depth. After all, I feel the water up to my neck. I have only one small request. Do not stop for a moment describing for me how the dry land appears. Right? We need hope. We need something to look to that can give us some inspiration, some source of hope. And with that hope, with that inspiration, great difficulty can be overcome. And without that, then we succumb. So an epilogue to this episode, of course, is that this snake, the Gemara tells us, ended up being preserved, and the Israelites took it with us into Eretz Yisrael. We brought it to Yerushalayim, and it was turned into an idol until eventually King Chizkiah destroyed it, because it had, even though Moshe made it for this honorable purpose, this noble purpose, it had turned into an idol. I think it's also a chilling kind of epilogue to this whole story, and to this dynamic that the poem is describing. We need someone to describe for us, Ech Niret HaYabasha, like we're drowning, we need somebody to describe, here's what the dry land looks like, so you can swim towards it, you can imagine it, and then know that it exists, and then swim towards it and get out of the predicament of drowning. But sometimes the thing that gives us hope when we are drowning can then become something we rely upon in an unhealthy way, and that ultimately, that is idolatry. And so we need hope, we have to avoid idolatry, and this is all implicated in the Nachash and Nechoshet, this copper snake that Moshe fashioned. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and look forward to being in touch with you in the coming days electronically, and then to see you again in person later on this summer. Shabbat Shalom.